Welcome to the Indie Film Hustle Podcast, episode number 34. 80% of success is just turning up. Woody Allen.
Broadcasting from the back alley in Hollywood, it's the Indie Film Hustle Podcast, where we show you how to survive and thrive as an indie filmmaker in the jungles of the film biz. And here's your host, Alex Ferrari.
Welcome, my indie film hustlers, to another episode of the Indie Film Hustle Podcast. I am your humble host, Alex Ferrari. Don't forget to head over to freefilmbook.com. That's freefilmbook.com to download your free filmmaking audiobook from Audible. And today's show is sponsored by Indie Film Hustle's online film school. We have a new film school online with online courses. I've gone throughout the web looking for the best online courses available for filmmaking, and I have brought them all together for you. You get over to indiefilmhustle.com/film school. Now, and I will be also adding more new courses as they come out. And I'm going to be working on a couple of my own little courses to help you guys out as well. There'll be much more about that in the coming weeks. So guys, today we're going to talk about visual effects supervisors and how imperative they are if you're trying to achieve something spectacular on screen. Now, I'm going to give you the official definition of a visual effects supervisor. A VFX supervisor is responsible for achieving the creative aims of a director and or producers through their use of visual effects. It's a pretty good definition of them, but there's a lot of things also that visual effects supervisors do as well. I've been a VFX supervisor on multiple feature films, working with my top-end guys, and I can tell you there's so much stuff that you have to deal with as being a VFX supervisor, as well as being a post-production supervisor. But here are some of the things that a VFX supervisor is responsible for. They handle VFX projects from conception through completion. They manage and direct technical, artistic, and production personnel. They possess knowledge of various visual effects techniques with emphasis on camera setups and film knowledge with an eye on composition and camera work. Accurately predict timing and associated cost of the project. Yeah, that's a big one. And collaborate on the bidding and negotiations process with different VFX houses, VFX artists, and so on. Now, in regards to indie film and visual effects supervisors, I've had a ton of films come through the door of Numb Robot, and they're talking about wanting to do visual effects. Now, visual effects is a very broad term. It could be something as simple as cleaning out some logos because the production forgot to Greek them out, or it's as big as creating landscapes, world creation, compositing, starships, explosions, muzzle flashes, all sorts of different things. Every project has different sets of problems and challenges for a VFX supervisor. So I'm going to tell you a quick story. A few things I want you to understand first, though, before I tell you the story. Filmmakers generally, especially independent filmmakers who don't understand the workflow of visual effects or understand how they're even made, they just have the assumption, or they've been watching too many behind the scenes videos of how VFX are made at a high level, like on the big budget tentpole movies. I get a lot of filmmakers that come in with big grandiose ideas, and that's fine and that's wonderful. When I do my films, I usually have big grandiose ideas too, but I have a plan on how to achieve those grandiose ideas, and that's where a lot of filmmakers fall and fail, because they want to have this huge thing, but they don't have the budget for it nor the technical know-how to even get to that point. I think I told a story with I think it was Dan on episode 6 about a filmmaker that came to us a while back that had a Star Wars fan film, and it was a huge production. He had done so much work. His let's say his ego was a little bit bigger than his capabilities, let's say, at the time. So what he did is he shot all this footage and had wire work everywhere and green screen everywhere, but had no idea how to prep it or do it properly for visual effects. So when he came to us with it, we were like, you've got to be kidding me. Like, the wire work is all over the place. Your green screen has no marks. You have a shaky camera, so there's no mark, so I can't track this. It was basically a waste. He literally had to go back and reshoot all of that stuff because it was just not. We weren't able to do it. It was just not feasible. Even at a big, huge budget, it would have never come out looking great because he didn't know how to do it properly when he was shooting it. And that's one big tip I can give you guys working in visual effects is, make sure that you are prepping this all the way through. Make sure you're shooting it properly. And again, I always just preach about workflow, but it's about that VFX pipeline. So if you're going to shoot something, make sure you understand that pipeline, that workflow, because if you don't, you just get massacred later on in post. VFX are a very, wonderful, powerful thing for a filmmaker, but it's also very dangerous because if you roll the dice on your movie success or even being able to be released on its visual effects and you can't achieve those visual effects, your whole project has failed. So perfect example is when I did my short film Broken. I had a grandiose, the ideas of visual effects, and we had multiple meetings with my my visual effects team, Sean Falcon and Dan Cregan and Ken Robkin, about what we can and cannot do. And at that meeting, they said, like, well, we feel comfortable we can do this, and this. So I had backups, like originally I had, at the time I really wanted to do this like kind of cool slow-mo matrixy bullets flying through the air thing back in 2004. And I wanted to do that, but that was a bit out of our range. So I changed things around a little bit on the day of the shooting and also in post. I was like, you know what, if we'll go for it. If we can't make it, we have a fallback position. So if I can't make these cool bullets here, I'll cut it this way, and then we'll just do this, and this to get the effect I want. My point is, don't allow your visual effects to ride your entire movie on whether or not VFX work. Because if it's that important, you better understand the workflow, and you also better have a really good VFX supervisor on board. And that's what a VFX supervisor is there to do. They're there to teach you and to tell you what you can and cannot do going forward on your budget and on your capabilities. So just because you might have an amazing VFX guy, you have to be able to have a great DP who can shoot properly. I was going to talk about green screen. Green screen is one of the biggest banes of my existence, though it's gotten so much easier now to pull to do green screen work on multiple of different applications, but it still needs to be shot properly. And I've seen, my God, I've seen $200 million movies with bad green screen work that I can see where the comp was done. And I'm like, wow, how did they let that go? So even the most professional teams have problems with green screen. So imagine you as an independent filmmaker might have as well. So make sure when you're shooting green screen that you have a DP who understands how to light that green screen. Preferably have a VFX soup or a VFX artist on set to help you light that, because they'll see things that you won't. I had once a project come to me with 4 greens in the same screen. 4 different greens. Not because they lit the green differently. They lit it all the same, but they had 4 different blankets, green blankets from all sorts of different things. And they literally taped them together from the back. And I'm like, what is this? And it was a moving shot and it had some swords and flying. And I'm like, you're out of your mind. I can't key this. My VFX guys looked at me. They're like, you gotta be kidding me. I'm like, trust me. I know we're not doing the project, but that's a perfect example. They went and they spent all that time shooting that scene, and they just didn't take the time to understand the technical aspects of what they were trying to achieve. So again, that VFX supervisor will help you do that. A lot of times I'll get a filmmaker come in, and this will be the way the conversation goes. They'll come in and they'll go, look, did you see that scene in Avengers? And I go, stop right there. You cannot do visual effects that are in Avengers. Your budget of your entire movie might be 50 grand, or might be 10 grand or 20 grand. And you're trying to achieve something that costs millions of dollars. It's not feasible. So you have to have realistic goals of what you're trying to do. And even if they're unrealistic goals, which I have worked on projects with filmmakers who had unrealistic goals, but they had a very clear path of how they were going to achieve these unrealistic goals because they did their homework. They hired the right people. They got a VFX supervisor on board. And when I say VFX supervisor, it doesn't have to be just a VFX supervisor. Sometimes a really experienced visual effects artist can help you become a VFX supervisor. So basically, when we did Broken, Sean Falcon was my VFX supervisor on that, because Sean, out of all of us at the time, had the most knowledge about the workflow, about how to get things done. And he defaulted as our VFX soup because he was the most technically knowledgeable guy. And he got some credits as a visual effects supervisor because of it. And now Dan Cregan's become a VFX soup on multiple projects as well, and he's actually become VFX leads on bigger, big, huge movies as well. So you don't actually need to have or hire a specific VFX supervisor if you can get a really experienced visual effects artist that can handle those responsibilities for you. Another thing that a lot of people in the indie film world don't understand is budget and how much things actually cost to do as far as visual effects are concerned. They have an assumption like, oh, we have $5,000 to do this amount of shots, and you're like, well, that's just not feasible. You're not going to be able to get the quality that you're looking for to do so at that budget range. So understand and really do your homework before you shoot. If visual effects are so important to you in your storytelling process, you have to do the homework on how much these things are going to cost prior to shooting. Because if your whole movie is based around like, I really need to have this set extension done, or I need to have this landscape created, or a cityscape, or I have to have this monster that's going to be the main monster of my movie. If you don't do your homework prior to doing that and hire a visual effects supervisor to kind of help you walk through what's really feasible and what's really not feasible, then you're just going to fall on your face. And and I don't want that to happen. I always feel so sad when I see filmmakers who put so much energy and time and they kind of spin their wheels because their movies can't be released, or they can't get it done right. Or if they try to do the visual effects, they don't look that great. So please always do your homework to see at any level, you should be doing your homework to see what it's going to cost and if it's even achievable at the budget range you're talking about. And there's thousands and thousands of visual effects artists out there, but you have to find good visual effects artists, and a good visual effects supervisor has access to these visual effects artists. And again, the same way the post-production supervisor has relationships with post houses to create or to do like deliverables, or to create, editing houses, or whatever deals have to be done to get post-production done. Visual effects supervisors have that same relationships with different either visual effects companies or visual effects artists that are working out of their garage, which I know most of the VFX guys I work with work outside of their garage, but they have huge monstrous credits working on big multi-million-dollar movies. And that's the way things are going nowadays. But I have those relationships as a visual effects supervisor that you don't as an independent filmmaker. So by hiring me or visual effects supervisor, those people will be able to give you those resources and maybe get your visual effects done at a much more affordable rate. The bottom line is a good visual effects supervisor is there to help you achieve your goals and get the thing done at the proper price, and also to get it at the proper quality, which is the big problem. One thing that we were very well known for at Numb Robot was muzzle flashes, because of our success creating muzzle flashes, unique looking muzzle flashes for Broken and for Red Princess. And it was a special thing that Sean did in Shake, that he actually created a script, and it wasn't stock. It wasn't like you went off and bought some stock muzzle flashes that didn't work for each and every angle that you were shooting at, which is a big problem with muzzle flashes in general. A lot of filmmakers, especially doing action movies, which I've done quite a bit of those kind of movies, is they like, oh, well, we can't get real guns on set, or we can't get real blanks on set, so we'll just put the muzzle flashes in post. And a lot of them will either do it in After Effects, which, again, there are great examples of that kind of stuff working, or getting stock muzzle flashes and putting them in and comping them in properly. You can get some really good stuff in, but I've seen so many bad muzzle flashes and so many bad visual effects that are from stock collections and things like that, because they're not comped in properly, they're not used properly. And again, a VFX supervisor can guide you. A good VFX supervisor can guide you through what to buy and what not to buy. A lot of the stuff that we've done in our projects were stock that we created, but because of the compositing that our VFX guys were able to do and be able to meld it and make it into our own, as opposed to just like, oh, there's an explosion, let's just throw an explosion in there. It's a layering of multiple different effects between smoke and things like that to make it look real. And I also wanted to talk about practical visual effects and visual effects. So practical visual effects are visual effects that are done or practical effects that are done on set, whether that be explosions, smoke, and so on. So I've always found, and this is still very true, and J.J. Abrams would agree with me because this is exactly what he did on the new Star Wars film, is that he used a lot of practical effects on set and then enhanced them with visual effects. So explosions, there were some there were explosions on set, and then he would enhance those explosions in post. And then you create this amazing effect that is more realistic and more believable than it would be if you just grabbed some stock explosion and threw it in there, or use some sort of particle generator to create fire or explosions. If you're able to incorporate some sort of practical elements, it's always better, especially with makeup, especially with blood hits, muzzle flashes. We had, with our muzzle flashes in Broken, we were using airsoft guns with blowback, meaning that every time you pulled the trigger, the gun cocked back like a real gun would, so it looked like it was ejecting shells, but nothing came out. So because we were able to do that, it created such a realistic vibe when we put the muzzle flashes on it that it took our effect to another level. So always keep that in mind. If you are going to do visual effects in your movie, see how much you can do practically first and then enhance it, because you'll be surprised at how much more affordable practical effects are to do than visual effects are, depending on where you're trying to do. And again, a visual effects supervisor will guide you throughout this entire process, and that's what they're there to do. So I hope you got a little bit of information about how to work with a visual effects supervisor and how to leverage the relationships that a visual effects supervisor has to achieve the goals, the visual effects goals of your independent film. Now, if you want to learn a little bit more about the VFX pipeline and how visual effects works, just as a general statement so you're more educated, we have a course in the Indie Film Hustle Film School, online film school, called the VFX, Understanding the VFX Pipeline. And you should definitely take a look at that. It's really affordable. There's always sales going on all the time. So always check back to see if you have we can give you a coupon code depending on the different sales we have. But it's really, really a good course and really breaks down the basics of VFX pipelines and VFX, understanding visual effects in general. It should be mandatory for all filmmakers who are even thinking about doing visual effects to take this course. And you can find that course at indiefilmhustle.com/film school. Now, to download the show notes for this episode, head over to indiefilmhustle.com/034. And don't forget to go to filmmakingpodcast.com to leave us an honest review of the show. It really helps us out a lot, guys. So keep that hustle going, keep that dream alive, and I'll talk to you soon.
Thanks for listening to the Indie Film Hustle podcast at indiefilmhustle.com. That's INDIEFILMHUSTLE.com.